What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another recap and review of the Penguin series, where I am diving into episode 5 titled Homecoming of the HBO Max series The Penguin. So, full spoilers from this point forward. So, if you have not watched episode 5, I would highly recommend pausing this, coming back to it after you watch episode 5, because you do not want to skip out on this series, okay? You should 100% be watching this series right now if you have not started it. So let's go ahead and jump into the recap. So Homecoming starts off with Oz and his crew kidnapping Maroni's son Taj as ransom in exchange for the Bliss shipment stolen by Nadia. At the same time, Oz has Vic look after Francis, which is his mother. During the trade, a guard bribed by Oz tries to assassinate Maroni in Blackgate, while Oz kills Taj and Nadia by setting them both on fire. The fire activates extinguishing sprays and destroys most of the Bliss, while Maroni survives the attempt on his life and is able to escape prison. Meanwhile, Gia is sent to a children's home, and Sophia tortures Vidi until he decides to support her bid to be the family head. Joined by Dr. Rush, who has fallen in love with Sophia, Sophia rebrands the family under her mother's name and earns their loyalty by arguing how they were similarly mistreated and neglected under Carmine's rule. When Vidi objects to her plans, Sophia executes him. She and a grieving Maroni later form an alliance to kill Oz, and then elsewhere, Oz is in a panic upon learning of Maroni's escape, losing the support of his lover Eve, while his mother berates him for forcing her to hide in a condemned apartment. Oz remembers an abandoned underground railway, showing it to Vic and declaring it their new base of operations to regrow the Bliss. So this is another great episode of the series, and they really haven't missed with any of these episodes so far. They are 5 for 5 on just absolutely great episodes. Now, this seems to be more of an episode geared towards progressing the storyline and kind of the plot overall, not necessarily growing the characters. And I think after a couple of episodes where we've kind of devoted the show to character development, I think this episode was very much needed in order to push this series forward. Like, at some point, you got to push the story forward, right? And I think they did a great job of doing that in this case. Now, one thing that I'm beginning to wonder, I have not thought about Batman really since the first episode, because it was mostly in concern that how would the series be able to kind of work around Batman and not mention him and so on and so forth. And between episodes 2, 3, and 4, never really thought about the guy, because they have done that great of a job of making me not care about Batman and making me care just strictly on these characters. But nobody is mentioning Batman in this episode or at all in this series so far. So I'm beginning to wonder, how will this series be able to close out with the Penguin on the rise in the mob world, in the underground world, and he's becoming now a supervillain of sorts, to the character that we would know him in the comics. Batman is not mentioned, not once. Now, I will say this to that, and I will kind of answer that question to why I think that Batman is not being brought up. So in the movie, the criminals are like, they're just now kind of getting to where Batman, like, they know who Batman is and them being afraid of him, right? Now, Robert Pattinson's Batman has been Batman for about 2 years in the Batman movie. Now, that's saying Batman a lot in that one sentence, but just bear with me, okay? So on one hand, I'm like, well, they should know who he is because they're all afraid of him, but nobody's mentioning him in this series. But at the same time, he's still kind of an enigma, pun fucking intended with that. And not everybody kind of knows who this character is, who this vigilante is that's stalking them and beating them to a pulp every single night. So I guess he's still kind of a unknown thing in Gotham at this point, which, I don't know. I still kind of find that hard to believe that he'd still be that unknown 2 years into being the Batman. But also, he's also dealing with a whole bunch of other shit at this point. But, that's not to say that nobody would actually mention him in this show. And that's kind of the issue that I'm not necessarily saying that Batman needs to be in this show. Okay? By all means, he does not need to be, and I don't want him to be. Which is weird saying that, because going into the series, that was my biggest question mark, which was, how are they going to make me care about the show without Batman being in it? And so far, they have done an amazing job of that by giving us amazing characters. So I don't give a shit if Batman ever shows up. honestly. But I'm just curious to know how they can push this series forward over the next few episodes without ever name dropping him. Like when they're trying to build up the mob, build up the underground, and he's trying to become a household name. Like, how does he not mention Batman at some point? Like, all right, let's do this, but like, how about we just not get stopped by Batman? Like, just name drop him once. I feel like again, I don't want to be a part of that crowd that's being overly negative that Batman's not in this. Like the issue that I have is how does no one mention him with him being a vigilante for 2 years now? I feel like he should be becoming a household name among all the criminals. But I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Let me know down below whether or not you think that he should be mentioned in this show, like name dropped or make an appearance. I'd be curious to know what everybody else's thoughts are on that. Now, we do get a couple more scenes between Francis and Oz, which is his mom, in this episode. And I'm starting to realize that we really haven't gotten much interaction between these two characters. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of want more of it. I think at some point you have to have like the heart of the show and you got to find something that a lot of people can relate to. And a mother son, mother child relationship is something that everybody can relate to just about, right? So the fact that we're going and we're sprinkling these scenes between him and his mom, I think is a really great idea. And no future spoilers because I'm reviewing both of this episode and the next episode all at once. I have enjoyed the few amount of scenes that we have gotten between these two characters throughout the season, and I love what they're doing here. They're not, yeah, they're devoting a lot of time to Sophia, but they're also sprinkling in some of these scenes with his mom, and to me, that's kind of the crux of the show. That's where all the heart is between these two characters, and make Oz a more human like character. And I'm also curious about Vidi kind of clapping back at Sophia during that little meeting of sorts where she's trying to tell everybody that she's going to be the head of the family now. I'm wondering if they had discussed, because he says he can help her gain respect, right? I'm wondering if they discussed what would transpire during that meeting. And Sophia kind of played him along to then where she's like at the meeting, she just tells him the truth of what her absolute plan is. And that's when he's just like, hold the fuck up. Like, we shouldn't do that. And that's her chance to cap him in front of everybody and to let everybody know that she's fucking number one. I'm curious to know if that was what happened overall, because a lot of people are saying that he just questioned her and she just didn't like it and fucking capped him. I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I'm thinking, and I kind of wish that if that was the case, they would have explored that conversation a little bit more of how he was going to get her to gain that respect among all the other members of the family. But just something tells me that she would play right into him thinking that. And okay, well, the way I'm going to gain the respect of all these people is if I just kill him straight out if he questions me on something. And she just kind of calls his bluff a little bit in that scene. Really great scene overall. Sophia doesn't have as much to do in this particular episode where it's like character development wise. Again, this episode is geared more towards pushing that story forward, but we still getting some great scenes of Sophia in this episode. And then the last little bit that I want to mention about this episode, Colin Farrell, I think, stole this episode for sure. He got a lot more to do. And I know I said that this episode was geared more towards pushing the story forward. A lot of the character development that was in this episode was geared towards Oz/Penguin. And I think they did a great job of kind of sprinkling in that character development here while pushing the plot forward. Because we get this little scene between Vic and Oz where they're at the house, and it was just so good when Vic asked him about his brothers. And I absolutely fucking hate it when characters just drop exposition or they just lord dump on us. And it's just like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes of them swapping camera angles between two characters. I don't necessarily like it like that when they're trying to explain like their backgrounds. And to me, that is what this show has done impeccably. They have not done the lore dumps. They have not done the exposition. And I think that is why this show is written so damn well, is because of those reasons right there. And that might be something that other people would prefer. Personally, that's not my preference. But when we get the little sprinkles of his history, his backstory, right there in this scene, I think is just so damn good. It's not dragging it on. It says just enough to kind of pique our interest. It's definitely a tease in the way that, like, of course, I want more stuff on the Penguin. I want more of his backstory and his life before the Batman started, right? But I'm not mad at it either. Because again, it's a tease and it makes you want more. It makes you want to continue watching this series. And I just think the writing on this show is some of the best written comic book characters, period. I can't say enough good things about the writing in this show, or the characters for that matter. But yeah, guys, I absolutely love this episode. Let me know down in the comments below of what you thought about episode 5, and I will catch you next time on the next episode. Laters.